Good afternoon, everybody. Andy with Perpetual Motion here. So, we had this little job call while we were down there in Georgia collecting that critter. We got here over by the shop getting ready for cleaning out and various projects need to get done on it. But anyways, and they said, I had looked at this before I went to Georgia several weeks ago, and they were saying that that notch is sloppy, that one. They wanted those built up, wanted to know if I could, bore them back out on the boring mill. So, yep, we could do that. Well, then they called, said they were ready to drop it off, or that they could drop it off. So I told them, yep, I'd be back here ready to go to work Monday. In the meantime, talked to the mechanic that pulled it down, and he tells me that they've got bushings up here where it pins on and that the bushings are loose. Well, that's a whole new can of worms because these don't normally even have bushings. So I already checked the bushings in the scrap hopper. 2 of them pulled out by hand. These 2, the bushings are tight in the hole, or tight-ish. They didn't fall out, but they're wore out on the ID. So that's a whole new problem that at this point, I don't know. I think they originally were talking about having me machine bushings and put in there, but honestly, I think it's just as well off on this application to just go ahead and weld them up and machine them back to be an apparent bore instead of a bushing operation. I'm not convinced bushings are that great because the problem is these holes I don't trust to be round anymore, so I can't just make a bushing and stuff it in there when there was a bushing loose. I could probably get away with it on this end, the bushing's still tight, but if I'm going to go to the work of welding and boring that, I might as well just do this, because these bushings are some kind of aftermarket thing that doesn't match any of the aftermarket sizes in my book. They may have made them. So that's the problem. By the time I make a pair of bushings, get the stock, I think we're just as well off in this instance to weld them up and bore them back down to factory dimension. So that's in addition to all the problems that I knew of. So then here's the other part of this little gem. This is the locking cylinder, and these, it's hard to see right now, but this slips over a peg that's about that long, and they've been loose, and it has wallowed this out. It's been chewing on that a bit. I'm not even entirely sure what we're doing with this yet. We obviously need to make new ones of these. They're concerned, and rightly so, that if I weld on this, I'm going to drive too much heat into this cylinder, and potentially warp it. I don't know for sure how this was originally made, but I'd like to believe that they welded all this stuff up and then finish bored it. And if I go to doing a bunch of welding and stuff here, even if I pulled the rod out, I don't know if you'd trust it to still be round. I think it'd be pretty risky. But so anyways, I think what we're talking about at this point is me just making a pair of new ones of these that are as snug on there, like adjust them to fit whatever wear there is. Bolt this together because those get bolted on tight and then it pivots, if you want to call it that, out here, but it doesn't really pivot. It's a straight line push. So basically, it just gets itself lined up, when you put it together and pretty much stays there. But so as you can all see, we got a bunch of work to do. I mean, I got bushings here. I didn't even measure the wall thickness. I mean, it's metric, but they're like, 10 millimeter walls. So about 3/8 of an inch on a side of buildup that's got to happen to get them back to where I can even machine them to factory bore size. So, and that's on top of huge buildup in both of those pockets. So I did ask them about, like, okay, just how expensive. This is a Hitachi 450, and they said that a quick coupler like this is probably $15,000-$20,000 and that it was cheaper to have me fix it. So by golly, we're gonna fix it. So I'll bring you along for the ride. All right, so here we are, welding away. I've got 2 passes halfway around there. I'm not sure that's enough, but decided I'd let that cool off a bit. It was getting too hot. I'm in here on my first pass, laying weld beads in there. And Wiggles is out here doing war with the carpenter bees that are drilling holes in our shop. Yeah, smoke them guys. So anyhow, that's what we're up to here, though, is just welding and welding and welding and welding and more welding. Alrighty, well, I'm about to call it a day. It's 8:30 at night, and I just thought I'd show you where I got to. So I am pretty well welded up on the bottom sides. It was getting hard to work in here. Like, I probably need one more pass in here, but because I'm welding up against a shoulder that way, I can't weld from in here very good, or you'll leave voids in there where the shoulder is facing away from you. So that was forcing me to get up in between the two ears here to weld in there, and I made the mistake of welding that one first. So it was cooking hot over there. So anyways, I stopped that and I laid one pass around the inside of these pockets here. I'm suspicious that it's going to take another pass there. I did a little playing with my ruler, and I think the wear in there might be worse than I thought it was, but 2 passes for sure will do it. So anyway, that's what we're currently up to. Well, we're still at it. I think I'm officially to the stage where I've got enough weld in the bottoms of all of these, bottoms of those, where I need to flip it over and start working on it from the other direction now. What a stinking lot of welding. Wiggles is over here working at getting this trailer moved out back for me, so we got more room in front of the shop. I was going to work on it, but I've run out of time, so he's getting her shoved out back for us with a forklift. Good work, Wiggles! It's a little tricky. He's probably going to have to maneuver back and forth a time or two. Oh, you might get her. He seems to have the right idea. I didn't think he'd get it swing around far enough to clear that Jeep carcass, but he's getting her. Oh yeah, he's got her. All right, everybody. So it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not quite done welding, but at this point I might as well cash it in and go back at it in the morning. I've got, I'd say, one more pass to do around the bottom side of that one. These I'm trying to decide what to do with, because I have worked on some of these that were brand new before. And this pocket, I'm trying to think, on a lot of them, they leave that one loose. Like, they'll have it fit the pin fairly snug. Sometimes they're both actually loose, and they're just relying on it get sucked in there and the wedge driving it up to hold it. So I got to be careful here, because I don't think this is all wear, even though, like, here, I'll show you. I've got this here is pretty close to the size of the pin, and that is not all wear there. A significant amount of that is actually from the factory design of the thing. So that's one of the things I gotta decide here, is how much to build it up. I'm gonna stick that wedge plate in there and slide it up against that and see what it looks like before I try putting any more material in there, because I don't want to end up getting myself in a situation where I have a ton to remove that didn't need to go in there in the first place. So anyway, this end though is definitely plenty good. You can see that it won't go in there now, so that's to the stage where I'll be able to cut it. This end I'll cut to a close fit to the pin, and then that end I'll let float. It's just a question of how much, but it's kind of a complicated situation getting the geometry to come back out right, so this wedge engages, locks, and you don't end up in a bind, because you got a center distance between here, and then how much material build up, versus where the wedge will start. So anyways, I probably got another good hour of welding, and then we're going to be setting her up on the boring mill and seeing what we can do with this mess. So anyways, that's it for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Alright, we're taking 20 thou on a side cut here. It's definitely got a bit of a hum to it, but it's doing it. Just trying to get the hole out where it cleans up. My last pass through there, I was only taking 10 on a side. It's hard to see from here, but it was leaving a pretty healthy crescent of wear, so let's try and see if we can get some material hogged out of here, even if the finish isn't very good. That's a lot of stick out on a boring bar that diameter, so I fully expected it to be trouble. She's eating. We're finding all the deficiencies in my welds, but we'll see. I'm starting to think pretty seriously that I'm going to end up doing some touch-up in here. Some spots had too much weld, some not enough. There's just a stinking lot of build-up to do, and keep it consistent all the way around the bore, but we're getting there. Well, this is my last heavy roughing pass, and she's not cleaning up. I kind of was expecting that, so we get through here. There's a big void up on this back side where it just didn't get enough fill in there, so it's the way she goes. See where we're at after this cut through and decide if we're hand welding or if I'm just going in here with a bore welder and laying a pass in the entire bore. Depends on how many ugly spots there are. My second pass through this bore. This boring bar is, I think, the second one I ever made back. Built this for my home built boring rig, but I almost never use it with it anymore, so it gets to spend its life in here on the boring mill. Taking 50 thou on a side cut right now. 5 thousandths per revolution feed rate, and what, 142 revolutions per minute. Final roughing pass on this bore. I hear a void somewhere. I can't see it, so it must be on the top edge. I hear it chick, chick, chicken every time it comes around there. So once we get through this pass, I'll have to pull the bar out and see if I stand on my head and can see it, because I haven't been able to spot it. So hopefully it ain't too ugly. There's a few voids on the far edge on the bottom that remain to be seen if they clean up or not. Alright, this should be final bore size. Man, is it singing. I don't know why it's doing that. It's not leaving an ugly finish, so we're going to go ahead and let it do it. But I don't know if you guys can hear that through the camera. It's loud enough to wreck your ears. So that bore is done. That one, we're on the finish pass right now. Once that's finished, we're going to go over here and go after this set of bores. Howdy, everybody. It's about 8:45 at night. I'm sitting here watching this thing chomping its way through the last of them bottom holes. Unfortunately, it looks like not enough buildup in there. This thing showed some evidence of either being twisted a bit or worn out of square. Good morning, everybody. It's about 6:30 here, Friday morning. I just took another cut through there, and she's not going to clean up, so I pulled back with the boring mill, taking the bearing off. I've got about 80 thou to go, and you can see like over there and up around the top side, that's not, it's 40 on a side, 80 on the diameter, so that's not going to clean up. So I've decided we're going to do some hand welding in here. By the time you set the bore welder up, as much as that's miserable hand welding up around the top side in there, half an hour with the welder, I'll have that fixed, and it'll take me longer than that just to set the bore welder up. So we're going to grit our teeth and go at it. I got to put some shielding down around here. I usually spray everything up with WD-40 to keep spatter from sticking. Put some shielding in, and we'll have at it. All right, 2 rounds of touch-up welding later, I got that last going on. Now I'm just feeling my way to the center line. We're taking our first swipe through there. Looking pretty good. Alright, so this is admittedly a little bit sketchy. I am hanging way out here, taking it substantially easier on the cutting with it hanging out that far, but I really don't want to have to try and set up an outboard bearing up on this, so we're just going to take it easy, light passes. It's doing better than I thought it would, in all honesty. I expected more bar deflection and chatter, but she's chomping through there, so we'll probably limit ourselves to like 25 thou on a side cuts doing this. Getting closer. Very happy with how that's machining, considering how far I'm hanging out here. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm taking 25 thou on a side cut, 5 thousandths per revolution feed rate, 142 RPM. Doing a nice job. Gets a little bit ripply when I'm in an interrupted cut, but now that I'm getting down to where, here it'll be a little bouncy again, but once I get down to the last few passes where it's solid material, I'm confident we're going to get a nice finish out of it. What I'll do probably is leave that overhang out, back up, and skim through both of them together so they end up identical. All right, so we're just taking a skim cut now all the way through there with this thing fully extended so that if I'm getting any weird deflection or anything, it's the same in both of them. All right, this is it, last pass. All we gotta do is move over and cut out this hump here, and You can kind of see the ripples here where I've been walking my way over, cutting my way through. I should be close enough together with my ripples that I don't actually need to do any grinding, that even the high points will be smaller diameter than the pin. So we'll see in a minute. I'm going to, when I get through this cut, I'm going to blow the chips out of it and grab the pin, see if it drops in there. All right, carving our way through. We're taking most of what I built up back off from that wall, because what I'm realizing is that by building up that pocket, you know, I've shifted it back that way, and actually because of the way the tongue works, it was wearing mostly this direction, and if I don't cut it back in pretty aggressively, if you get one with a factory pin width, it won't drop in there. So I'm cutting pretty heavy to that side. Where it really needed the buildup was down in the bottom, because the tongue wasn't clamping it good. So that I'm just barely skimming. Looks pretty good. I like where the depth is at. I'm just going to move up and over and clean up the other side of the pocket now. As done as I'm going to take it, the customer is on their way to get it. They really want to pick it up. I need to get working on the other parts of this, so they're going to go ahead and grind up the weld faces and finish that stuff up. But I've got it to where the pin fits in all the holes. You can see I did go in here and buff the ripples out. Pin slides right in there now. So anyway, this thing is ready to go. It's just time for me to fight with the cylinder and fix its problems now. Okay, so I can't remember what all I showed you guys. I tried spinning this thing in the lathe, discovered that these are bent. I could not get it trued up, and it was scary and not safe. So anyways, I was scratching my head. I had concluded I was going to lay it down on its side on here, which was going to be a pain in the butt, because this thing is different diameters here and here, so you couldn't just put it between V-blocks, or you have to shim it. Anyways, I was busy scratching my head trying to figure out how to do it when a old friend of my dad, former co-worker, his retired machinist, stopped in. And moral of the story, guys, is don't run the old guys off that come stand around and chew the fat, because he stood here, looked at what I was doing for a while, and said, well, what you really need is a rotary table with a chuck on it. And all of a sudden, my brain engaged, and I thought, good golly, why do I own a super spacer if I'm not going to use it? So now we got the super spacer laying on its back here. We're going to grab this thing as the base of this is machined. The sides of it machined, and we're going to grab this thing in a super spacer. I'm just getting ready to get trued up. I got to run an indicator back and forth across here and get squared up to the spindle, and then we're going to take this sucker and go to town with it. Anyhow, I am very, very thankful for the bit of advice that I got given, because that one little piece made the difference between this being a nightmare and being pretty reasonable. Because obviously what I can do now is get set up, indicate in on this, and then come in with a boring head with a boring bar turned around, skim the outside of this, flip it 180, come back in and skim it, turn or cut the faces off square with an end mill, and Bob's your uncle. All right, here we are, first cut, skimming our way around there. Looking pretty decent. Right, this should be my last roughing pass. It ain't quite gonna clean up on the bottom, but sorry about that, it's focusing around the left thing. I think that'll be good enough. What I'm gonna do, she's a little chattery, so feed in, and then I'm going to reverse it and feed back out without changing the settings. I really should have a shorter boring bar in here for what I'm doing, but I didn't have one. And we got a lot of hangouts. I really wanted to use that little Criterion head with this little bar. That'd have been much better setup, but the Criterion that I grabbed wouldn't travel out far enough to get around this peg, so oh well. You see there's just a little wetness on the corner there that didn't quite clean up, but not bad. We'll just go ahead and spin her around, take that much more back off the other one yet. So I just want to be able to machine two pegs that go on here to the same dimension.